that we do not have control over much of our lives. I always equate this. I always say to people, we live on a planet that's floating in space, traveling through space at ridiculous speeds. And, and there's lots of other things traveling through space at the same time, at the same, if not more ridiculous speeds. We've no control over that. Yeah, that's happening. So, we don't even think about it. We don't even think really about the fact that we also live on a globe that at its very center is molten metal. We don't have any control over that. So the secret is to recognize what you can control and what you can't control. And the short route to that is to recognize that really the only thing you can control is yourself and your reaction to what's going on around you. How do we stay grounded? Well,
this morning on my walk, I couldn't help but notice that the leaves are everywhere. It was beautiful, but also for me a bit sad, because autumn doesn't hide change. Autumn makes change show ever so boldly. And it made me think of today's topic, where we'll be looking at resilience. And isn't it beautiful that sometimes when we come out at the end of the rainbow, that's when we can see through those fallen leaves. So resilience isn't built in sunshine. It's built when things fall away, when it's wet, it's windy, it's uncomfortable. And guess what? When you still keep walking to the end of that rainbow, that's how we built it. Today's guest knows that season so well. She's worked with teachers, school leaders, and young professionals, helping them rebuild energy, confidence, and balance. And in some of the toughest moments, I can remember some of the toughest challenges I faced was when I was in a classroom. Pulling up a chair with us in my kitchen today is Jayne Williams. She's a peak performance coach. She's a trainer. She's the founder of Jayne Z Williams. I just love that name, Jayne Z Williams Coaching. She's passionate, really good friend, and she's helping educators and Gen Z professionals thrive, and not by pretending that everything's fine, but by building real systems for resilience. So as we enter into our first lesson, Jayne, welcome to my kitchen. Resilience isn't a system, it's a system. Tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us about Jayne. Tell us why you're so passionate about helping teachers.
Okay, so
sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Lovely, thank you. So this reference to nature, as you know, Yvonne, I love metaphors. And the metaphor that I really love for nature for resilience is the willow tree. Now, I think willow trees are beautiful anyway in their own right. But if you think about a willow tree, they are very, very flexible. They've got those long branches and also long, thin leaves. And of course, those branches are particularly good for weaving baskets with. Not many people know that also, as well as that flexibility, willow wood is very, very hard. And that's why it's used to make cricket bats with. And also it contains salicin. Now, salicin is what we turn into aspirin. It has anti-inflammatory and pain-killing properties. As well as that, the willow tree is very hardy. It can withstand a variety of weather conditions, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. A fully grown willow tree can grow to 70 feet high. That's more than the size of a 2-story house. It has a very deep root system, 15 feet down to find its nourishment, and 30 feet broad to create that stability. Now, that's a system. Yeah, it's above the ground. It's all flexible and can withstand, the harshest of storms. Below the ground, it's got a system for getting its nourishment and for making sure that it's well anchored. So, in a way, that is sort of, for me, that's a metaphor that sums up resilience. So I tend to think of resilience as diffident persistence, the recognition that although something scary or painful has happened, we can still cope, even if the coping means that we have to ride out the storm. Because we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control our responses to what happens to us. Now, if you think about the challenges that Gen Z, or Gen Z as we might say in England, faces, there's this constant digital exposure, which will include, of course, not only the work-based packages, but social media, software, and now the growing interest in AI. And that's changing and growing all the time. They've got the economic uncertainty, there's rising anxiety rates. So resilience needs to be built in as a support system rather than a standalone response. The core components of a resilient system for a person would be relationships that are safe and dependable, connections and mentorship, meaning and identity, and by that I mean coherent narratives that make setbacks intelligible, practical skills such as emotional regulation, problem solving, planning, small step goal setting, habits, routines, what some people may call rituals, predictable routines that restore energy and focus. And then of course we've got the environmental supports, workplace and school policies, access to services and financial buffers. So they need to also build in some digital hygiene, boundaries about the way they use social media and what information they are consuming.
Yeah, so in other words, like be aware of what's coming in, because what's coming in is going to influence how we process and how we maybe our global view of everything, right? I remember there's a time during COVID, a friend of mine and I were talking, funny enough, a couple of days ago, and she said, oh my God, Yvonne, I literally went off watching the news during COVID. Because I just used to get palpitation because there was all this information coming from everywhere. And I'm just wondering whether, when you talk about digital hygiene and kind of creating this space around the buffer between the information that we have coming in and how we're able to process it, whether a lot of this is actually creating some space to be able to feel, so to know, oh, this doesn't feel right. Because what she said was, I started getting these palpitations. And what COVID, I think in some sense, for a lot of people, it created that space, because we were stuck somewhere for such a long time. You either coped or you didn't. But I mean, that's really powerful. I was scribbling furiously because there was so many gems there. But we'll hopefully get an opportunity to go back and revisit some of this, because I believe a lot of what you've shared is so powerful. It's about doing what matters and doing it consistently. And what you just provided there is a perfect system for how to do it. So that walks us really nicely into our second lesson, working with Gen Zs. What can you say they are teaching us? Because you work a lot with Gen Zs and you say something that's really struck with me through this. They are craving meaning more than management. Can we talk about what teachers, leaders, and even vendors can learn from that?
I think what teachers can learn, and for me, I think this is probably a relearn for teachers, because I do think that this is embedded in the training of becoming a teacher. But what teachers can learn to do is to teach curiosity, teach their learners to have curiosity. When I used to teach teachers, and I know that's a big mouthful, I used to say to them, teach your learners how to learn, teach them to be curious. You want them to be asking lots of questions about why. Why does this happen? How does this impact? What happens if? That's really what learning is, as opposed to maybe a curriculum that's designed more around assessing specific criteria. You're trying to develop curious minds, because if you develop a curious mind, you've got a tool for life, haven't you? You can then go on and continue to learn for as long as you want to. Teachers need to provide opportunities for mastery. So short skills, practice, giving them an opportunity to try it out, giving them an opportunity to really think deeply and problem solve certain things. So that might even be providing real life experiences for some of those learners. And what learners today want to see is how they are progressing. Where was I identified as my starting point? Where am I heading for, and how far over that bar, how far along that bar am I? So they like to see visibly how they are progressing. And so that feels like real development for real life skills, rather than necessarily just ticking off outcomes. Another thing that teachers can do, and they probably do this a little bit less, is invite their students to shape projects and assessment criteria themselves, so that their values and their interests are beginning to show up in the work. And a classic one for teachers: let go of the need for correct answers. What we should be focusing on more are the problem-solving methods that the learners are developing. We should be focusing more on how they are developing their curious and creative thinking patterns. And another way to do that is to help them to carry out quick reflective practices that help them make sense of their feelings, any stress that they may be experiencing, to locate meaning in setbacks. And to do that, really what we need to do is we need to acknowledge and praise resilience and comebacks. Create the expectation that setbacks are a normal part of life and necessary for growth.
Oh, that's a really good one. So in doing that, so we if we just go back to our system that we talked about, because as you were talking, there's so much there. We talked about resilience being about controlling how we react, not about because we can't control what happens, and so there's a lot that we looked at when you looked at that reference to the willow tree. And I was thinking, even as we are holding, this webinar, and a lot of people listening will be business owners, and business owners will have their teams. There's a lot here that we can translate to the classroom, to schools, to communities, but also to business owners. So, you started with a really powerful, constantly ask why, what, how, right? Constantly keep asking, we're teaching curiosity. So if there's if there's a set of objectives, because we want to be having little goals that we know we're getting there. We in LocaeRise, we call them targets. So we work with a quarterly target, and then we have a monthly target. And based on what we call pods, we have different departments within LocaeRise. The pods then, they will have their individual pod member targets, but also the overall pod target that then fits into the company's objectives. And what I'm seeing, those are kind of like mini goals. And so in the classroom, what we are saying is you will have, the exam board would have set, whatever it is that needs to be taught. And so our role as educators in the classroom is those are just targets, right? And the assessments are just little checkpoints to see whether they have met those targets, and don't make that the full learning experience. Ask constant what, how, why, and bring the students into the project. Just like if you're running a team, you're bringing your team members into the project by showing them this is where we want to be, this is how your job gets you there, and it's the same with the classroom, right? So you're providing those opportunities for mastery. I think it was Disney that said imagination is the most important thing you can have, isn't it? Walt Disney.
Absolutely.
So, oh my God, that is, you know what, Jayne, I am loving this. There's so much to learn, which takes us nicely into our third lesson. We're looking at resilience. We have looked at the system to get there, and Jayne just walked us through the process of how we get to be more resilient. And resilience is not about what happens, but how we handle it. So now we know that challenges are part of life. In fact, just like the willow tree, that's how you get deeper, and that's how we're able to grow. How do we stay grounded when everything is changing, Jayne?
Right. Okay. So I think you've already touched on one of the things, and there is a recognition, or we need to have that recognition. And I don't just mean at an intellectual level, Yvonne, but also at an emotional level, that actually that we do not have control over much of our lives. I always equate this. I always say to people, we live on a planet that's floating in space, traveling through space at ridiculous speeds, and there's lots of other things traveling through space at the same time, at the same, if not more ridiculous speeds. We've no control over that. Yeah, that's happening. So we don't even think about it. We don't even think really about the fact that we also live on a globe that at its very center is molten metal. We don't have any control over that. So the secret is to recognize what you can control and what you can't control. And the short route to that is to recognize that really the only thing you can control is yourself and your reaction to what's going on around you. How do we stay grounded? Well, you talked about self-awareness. So it's about reflecting, if you like, keeping that self-awareness close by, close in our minds. But one of the first things that I would suggest to anybody is to get as much sunlight as you can. Yeah, the days are getting shorter. We start to feel tired and constricted. Naturally, we turn inward. That's what the season is about. Things turning inward. You don't need to spend hours outside. 5 to 30 minutes will do, although the longer you're out there, the better you're going to feel. So get as much sunlight as you can. Time on our hands can be productive or counterproductive. I would suggest get a journal and ask yourself this question regularly. Whose bricks am I carrying? Now, years ago, a wise person, and I can't remember who it was, said to me, in life, we pick up a sack of bricks on our journey. And the trick is to find out which are your bricks, and which ones are someone else's. Every disappointment, every rejection, every small failure, every unkind word, that's a brick in the sack. The trick is to find out which ones are yours and which ones are someone else's. And the sooner you find that out, give them back their bricks. Yeah, let them carry their own bricks. You lighten your own load. One of the things I've come to believe in my later years is that actually most of them are somebody else's bricks, if not all of them are somebody else's bricks. So they can have that load back again, and I will lighten my own load. And you know, as in terms of reflection, do some mindfulness. You know, focus on your breathing just for a few seconds. Every second focusing on your breathing is, you know, it is nourishing to your mind and body. Simply saying to yourself the words, I am breathing in, I am breathing out, you know, is enough. Just for a few seconds, 5 minutes if you can do it. And if you can visualize a place outdoors while you're doing it, even better. And the other thing that I would say is honor your fatigue. Yeah, it's not failure, it's feedback. Structure some not doing time into your world. You know, I sometimes hear it said, I am a human being, not a human doing. Yeah, get a good night's sleep, and if you find that difficult, prepare yourself a sleep ritual, such as a tidy room, a warm blanket, a warm drink, something to prepare your brain, your mind to accept that this is, you know, this is my sleep time now. I'm ready for sleep. And also to build in some rhythm. So in the morning, I like to start the day with intention. I might say something to myself like, I welcome this day with calm and balance, knowing that all things arise and all things pass. And they do, all emotions pass. And I might do a bit of stretching with that. In the afternoon, I stop and do the breathing exercises I've just explained. Sometimes you can replace that with a different mantra. Sometimes I use the mantra, this breath is enough, I am enough. And then in the evening, have a little reflection, get your journal out, think about what you did well. That's what I like to do. What did I do well and what could I improve on? And then I finish off the day with this phrase, because this is the full stop on the day. This is the preparation for sleep. And I say to myself, today I have done everything I could have done with what I already knew. The best thing I can do now is rest and restore myself ready for another day. So that removes, you know, that sort of reflection on what went well and what didn't go well. That phrase then removes any guilt or blame that I'm trying to place on myself about what didn't go well. You know, I did the best I could with what I already knew. So let's park it, put it down and go to sleep.
Oh my God, Jayne, I really love that. Even just listening to you, I'm going to be calling you Coach Jayne from now on. I love it. Can I? Am I allowed?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Well, I am a coach.
The reason why that, yeah, and the reason why that really caught, I think for me, that landed was because it's almost like you did a sunrise to a sunset, you know, yeah. Like literal, it's a ritual. And as we know, nature operates in rituals and we're part of nature.
Yes.
So, you know, the most beautiful thing is, you know, what you said, it's, we are not human doings, we're human beings, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that. Resilience is not just bouncing back, it's being able to plant roots so that we can stand when the wind hits, and you just told us how to do that, right? From morning till afternoon till evening, constantly checking in. Are we a being or are we a doing? So if I can just like give us some of the nuggets, because you've dropped so many on this call today. Jayne, when are we having you back? I really want to go into a lot more, literally scribbling, because I'm thinking, oh, I want to go back to this, I want to go back to that. And there's just so many things. So the first thing you started us on was rituals, habits, and routines. So build a system. right?
Yes.
And there's lots of things around the system. So the system around you and what you do, and and then the system around what you surround yourself and who you surround yourself. And just build some habits and routines, because start with a system, just like the willow tree has a system. And then the next thing you said is, now, how do you make that system take root, right? How do you embed your system? It's to develop, and there's so much in here, but the one thing I took away from that is develop quick reflective practices. So an opportunity to stop, and you say something that, breathe. And there was some, really important things. As you breathe, check in, or as you breathe, see yourself outside, see yourself somewhere, and also be realistic, right? Not realistic in the fact that, people use that, be realistic about what it's for you, from what you said, it's the recognition that we don't really control much, of life. If you even think about where we're rooted, if you like, on Earth, it's actually not still, and it's moving really, really fast, and we never think about that. That is true. But even our bodies on their own, right? Nothing is what we call solid, isn't really solid. Somebody was teaching me a bit about physics. It's like they're just moving at a different speed, all our cells and everything, right? So everything's constantly moving. And it's that self-awareness. And then finally, this was the big takeaway for me. And I think Mel Robbins wrote about it in her book, where she said, let them. Whose bricks am I carrying? Find that out as soon as you can and give them back their bricks. So I just love that, as mothers, as daughters, as sons, as husbands, as fathers, as teachers, as leaders, as head teachers, as students. Everybody is carrying somebody else's bricks. It might be expectations from what you should be doing from our parents, because you're a student. I used to teach in grammar school, and a lot of students that go to grammar school to say, when I finish school, I want to be a doctor. When I finish school, I want to be a lawyer. Then you went into the conversation. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Tell me why. My mother tells me, right? That's an example of bricks that we're carrying.
Another example of bricks is, many of us can recall, remember, even physically experience something unkind somebody said or done, or something like that. And actually, that is their brick, because that's them responding to the bricks that they're carrying in their sack. Yeah. So, you can give them that one back as well, just because, they felt the need to be unkind because they hadn't come to terms with something either in themselves or that has happened to themselves.
And that's powerful. That actually creates a lot of relational peace, right? Somebody said something to me, okay, yes, it might hurt, but can I give it back? Can I give that hurt back? Because really it wasn't meant for me. It was just a mirror of where they are. Oh my God. All right, Jayne. Before we wrap up, it's time for our rapid fire round. And you've been here before, so you know how this goes. There is no thinking. You've got to say the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready. Good. Tea or coffee?
Tea. With a little tiny half teaspoon of sugar. And builder's tea, Yvonne. None of this weak stuff, builder's tea, good strong cup of tea.
You and me have that alike. I want to taste my tea. My other half wants to do a little dip and then take it out, it's too strong. I only put it there for a minute. Oh, what, a minute? Okay, so the next question. One book everyone should read on performance or mindset.
Okay, so I think I've said this before, The Courage to Be Disliked. That tells you all about the bags of bricks that you're carrying and how you give them back. it talks about the separation of tasks. You know, what's your task in life, what's your responsibility, and what's somebody else's responsibility, and encourages you to leave them to take on their own responsibility. So, you know, it's not your job really to rescue people from the mistakes they could be making. That you haven't separated the tasks if you're still rescuing people.
That's a hard one, yeah. That's a tough one. And you know, those breaks. You know, I hope everybody like tries to take this away and just reflect on it, because it really does free up so much just to just have that awareness. This is not my way.
I think if they read the book, it will probably explain it much more clearly than I have.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jayne. So you have explained it really well. I really enjoyed that. Your favorite way to reset when you're overwhelmed?
Walk by the sea. Walk in the sea if I can. Yeah, if it's not too cold, I like to get my feet wet and just listen to the sound of the sea. Just relaxes me. I feel everything reset. My shoulders, settle down. In between my shoulder blades becomes so much easier, and I'm just, reminded of just how amazing the planet that we live on is.
Yeah. Don't walk by the sea. The sea air breathing, really good.
Yeah.
If resilience had a soundtrack, what song would it be?
Roar by Katy Perry. I am the eye of the tiger.
That's the best one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Jayne. Thank you for joining me in my kitchen
Thank
and
you.
for reminding us that resilience isn't something we wait for. It's actually something that we practice. Where can we learn more about your work, what you're doing, what are you doing? Would you like to let us in a little bit on it?
Well, I've got a website, so it's janezwilliams.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Facebook, both as Jayne Z. Williams, and I try and post something about 4 times a week, so maybe a couple of times on LinkedIn, 3 or 4 times on Facebook. And I've also got a Facebook group that people can come on, and it's called Empowering Teachers to Thrive. And it really is a safe space in which teachers can just really talk. If all they want to do is vent, that's fine. They can do that and just offload really. And we're creating a supportive environment where sometimes people may have solutions to their problems, but whatever, they can come and just tell us how things are happening for them.
Beautiful. You have been listening to Jayne Williams, peak performance coach, professional at resilience. I'm going to be calling her Coach Jayne from now on. She has taught us so much. I mean, Jayne, where were you when I was a teacher? We needed that safe space. I'm glad that you for the next teachers, and thank you so much on giving us insight, comments on well-being, giving us deep information on how we can embed a system on resilience. These things are never talked about. Generally, a lot of the times when you talk about resilience, a lot of people, you need to be more resilient, right? But we don't really see how or where to go for information or what to do about it. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure our listeners have really got some major takeaways. I know I have. I've scribbled 4 pages worth from what So Next week, next Thursday, we're back with our Connect and Convert monthly webinar. It's a big one. We'll be joined by a guest who's been working closely with schools on SEN provision. She's going to help us understand how to communicate with different types of people, because she's doing it on a daily basis, working with a variety of students, right from the young students to the older ones to their parents, and is really well versed in neurodiversity. And we'll walk you through our FIND system and then make it more practical, showing you exactly how to connect, convert, and grow your impact in school. So book your free spot. It will be on the link when we publish it. We publish on YouTube, we publish on LinkedIn, and very, very soon we'll be publishing on Facebook as well. So as we come to the end of today's episode, remember, keep your kettle warm, as Jayne just said. Make sure you get outside in the sunshine. Keep those conversations real. And remember, as the leaves fall, they make way for God. Thank you so much.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.